Western Pennsylvania, the site of the final game for Week 8 at the NFL's regular season. Monday Night Football at the confluence of the Ohio, the Allegheny, and the Monongahela River. The place to be, where the Pittsburgh Steelers welcome in the New York Football Giants. If you're a Russell Wilson fan, this show is for you. And if you're a Daniel Jones fan, prepare yourself as we get you prepared on the Pregame PowerUp on DraftKings Network. And glad you're with us for another edition of Pregame PowerUp on DraftKings Network. Trey Wingo here with Claudia Bellafato. Emerson Lazia will join us. Stormy Bonatoni will join us. Former NFL offensive lineman Marshall Newhouse will join us as well as we get set to break down everything you need to know about the Monday night game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Football Giants. And Claudia, this line has had a massive shift for a couple of reasons already. Yeah,
2 weeks ago, the Steelers were 3.5-point favorites, and you said massive reasons, one of them being the Giants putting up 10 points in 2 games. Russell Wilson, of course, getting in there for the Steelers and winning a game, throwing 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they won, period, with Russell Wilson. Everybody wanted to give Mike Tomlin heat, and he said, hey, look, I know how to do this coaching thing. So lots of faith in the Steelers squad, now up to 6, bounced around 6.5. But I think a lot of this money and a lot of the bets coming in on the Steelers might have to do with just fading Daniel Jones and these Giants.
Well, why would you do that? Oh, wait, we have the numbers for it. We have 2 quarterbacks going in completely different directions, but don't take my words for it. Take the data. First, the previously mentioned Daniel Jones. He was benched in order for Drew Lock at the start of the fourth quarter. They lost to the Eagles last week. The Giants, as Claudia said, have scored a grand total of 10 points over the last couple of weeks, and Jones has had a passer rating of 64.2. That's out of 158 point something, with no touchdowns and 1 interception. So that's not good. The other side of this is Russell Wilson. Very, very impressive, especially in the second half in his first start of the season for the Steelers. He threw for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns in their win over the Jets. Wow, team's beating the Jets. We'll get into that a little bit later. It was the most passing yards for a Steeler quarterback in his debut, breaking a record that had been set by Earl Morrall back in 1957. And then let's just do this. When it comes to Monday night, these two are once again, you're going the wrong way, Daniel. You have everything going Russell Wilson's way. Russell has feasted on Monday night in his career, 11-5, 25 or 26 touchdowns rather than just 5 picks. 103.5 passer rating. Why is that significant on Monday Night Football? That's the 3rd best in league history behind Drew Brees and Steve Young. And then there's Daniel Jones. If you're a Giants fan, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. He hasn't won on Monday night in a long time, hasn't ever won on Monday night. 11 interceptions, on the most by a quarterback on Monday Night Football since 2019. Oh, by the way, that was the year Daniel Jones was drafted. But despite all of this, Jones is still the guy in New York and is ready to put last week's benching behind him.
We went over the game, watched the film, spoke about the game. I'll leave a lot of that private, but like I said, I'm getting ready to play Pittsburgh. Obviously, no one's happy about the way the game went last week. I think there's a number of issues that we're all working to address and improve, and that's what we got to do. So, starting with me, and I'm taking that approach, but we're moving forward this week, and I think that's our mindset.
Yeah, I talked to all the players. So, again, those are private conversations, but I'm not going to relive last week. 11 minutes left, down 28-3. We're going to get ready to go play Pittsburgh and have a good week of practice.
By the way, I love that Dave said, yeah, I talked to all the players. That's the nicest way he can say, shut the bleep up. I'm not telling you what I was talking to Daniel Jones about. By the way, our producer Slates in our ear said, don't forget, we got more sad Daniel Jones graphics coming up. And this is really sad. Slates was right on the money. Daniel Jones in primetime, it's not good. 1-14 is the lowest winning percentage by a quarterback with 5 or more starts. He's yet to win on Monday Night Football, as we said. He's gone 7 straight primetime games without a touchdown. And oh, by the way, In his career, he's 0-5 when facing a top 5 scoring defense, and that's exactly what he's facing tonight. And there's more bad news for Giants fans, right, Claudia?
Yeah. So what you're saying is Daniel Jones in prime time bad, and apparently Russell Wilson joined the right team. Our first and trend shows us just how good the Steelers have been in prime time, almost perfect straight up on Monday Night Football since 2014, the best in the NFL, 21 and straight up at home on Monday night, and 8-2 ATS in the last 10 primetime games. So all of that has been great. One of the big reasons for that has been, of course, their head coach Mike Tomlin, but specifically their defense, the bread and butter of this team, and it's as good as ever, only allowing 14.4 points a game, the second in the NFL to the Chargers. They're top 5 in points allowed, rush yards per game, red zone touchdown percentage, and takeaways. The anchor of this defense, playing in his franchise record 202nd career game tonight, is Cam Hayward. And despite all of the good team stats, he sees some room for improvement.
There's more to accomplish. Even if you're at the top, you got to stay at the top. And you look at our defense, second or whatever, we got to get better. There's still mistakes on the field. There's still little things we can clean up. Communication can always be better. Don't have the sacks that we want. Stopping the run could be better. I think when you look at collectively, there's a lot we can improve on, and we're going to keep striving for that.
Just continuing to grow and develop as a unit, getting better call communication in general, making sure we're looking to the sideline if signals are need to be used, and just all simple things. There are mistakes that we can limit for sure, and we're only going to get better as we continue to play in the elements.
And listen, I know it seems like we're picking on Daniel Jones. Well, we are. But it's numbers you need to know, people. The Giants quarterback is 0-5 in his career against top 5 scoring defenses in week 5 or later. And I know that's specific, but that's what he's up against. He's got a 56.4 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns to 4 interceptions in that stretch. And the Giants are scoring about 14 points a game and have lost by an average of 13 points in those matchups, Trey.
Claudia, I don't want people to think of it as we're picking on Daniel Jones. We're just doing our job.
It's the truth.
I'm not picking on you. This is just the job. These are the numbers. We're not making this up.
We want better for you, Daniel Jones. We
do.
really do.
But we have this. At least the Giants, maybe their unofficial slogan is, hey, at least we're not the Jets. Because the Jets actually had expectations going into the season.
That's
the
true.
Giants, I think we all knew where this was going to go. For more on that, let's bring in from the DraftKings trading floor in Las Vegas, Stormy Bonatoni. Stormy, let's talk about this. As we've been stewing over the numbers, they're not good for Daniel Jones and the Giants. How are bettors looking at this when they see the numbers that are, wait for it, not good for the Giants and Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel like we're going to have more picking on Daniel Jones this segment. I hate to say it, but you guys set the table really, really well for what to expect. And anybody on the surface that looks at this game, I'm sorry, they're not saying, wow, Daniel Jones, those weapons and that offensive line are really going to eat today against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. That's just not the reality of it. And from a betting market standpoint, we've seen Daniel Jones passing yards prop bet down around 10 yards. From a passing touchdown standpoint, typically when you're looking at quarterback markets, the average market is set at 1.5 passing touchdowns, right? If a player is having a lot of success, maybe it's over 2.5. Daniel Jones's touchdown prop is set at over a passing touchdown, and 78% of the bets coming in are on the under because he does have back-to-back games without a passing touchdown. You guys laid it out. 7 straight primetime games where he hasn't accounted for a touchdown. That's 359 straight plays under center, under the lights, where he's yet to do anything. And so I don't know what it is about the nighttime that turns Danny Dimes into Danny Pennies, but it's ugly, guys. That said, if there is a prop that you want to buy in on Daniel Jones on tonight, the market has seen an uptick on his rushing yards, over 26.5 rush yards. And same thing with his attempts at 5.5, juiced at around -155, with the thought process that, yes, he has been running a little bit more. He's gone over both of those numbers in 2 of his last 3 games. But also, if this Giants offense is going to have any success today against the Steelers, he's probably going to have to use his legs.
Stormy, you say a lot of smart things, but that one really stuck out, so much so that we could hear down the hall the control room going, oh, Oh, burn, Danny Pennies. That was a good one. Let's flip this around. Give Danny Dimes a second of reprieve here. Russell Wilson clearly proved everybody wrong who thought Mike Tomlin was making the wrong decision, putting him under center and benching Justin Fields. He came out, he won that Week 7 game. So how are bettors reacting heading into this game in the market?
I think good and bad, because from one standpoint, we've seen Russell Wilson, the sample size at this age. I don't think that a lot of people's priors are suddenly going out the window because of one performance. But he also did have the most passing yards for a Steelers quarterback this year, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And there is something to that. So when we look at the market, there's been pretty good two-way action on both Russell Wilson's passing and rushing over-unders. But the passing touchdowns has been one-way traffic to the over 1.5 passing touchdowns, thinking that he'll have success from that standpoint. Something I do think, though, is pretty telling about the state of the Steelers offense as a whole on the season is that, guys, the most bet prop for this entire game, any player, is actually Chris Boswell, their kicker, over 1.5 field goals. We think this is going to be a lower scoring game. People think that Chris Boswell, who's been one of the best kickers in the NFL this year, is going to go over that number. He just had 1 missed kick all season long, guys.
He's been one of the best. We are in the golden age of kickers in the NFL. There's no question about it. Before I go on to the next, real quickly, we do have to say, like, the offensive line has not helped Daniel Jones much this season. So, yes, the numbers are bad for Daniel, but sometimes he'll take the sack and his first reaction is, where are they coming from? I mean, it's been instantaneous. So let's talk about the spread for this game, Stormy. It was as low as 3. Now it's fluctuated about 6 and 6.5. Where are we in the confidence level that the Steelers will be able to cover a pretty substantial number?
Well, from a betting standpoint, there's obviously a lot of confidence that we've seen the number move out to as high as 6.5, as you referenced. A little bit of Giants buyback, though, now at that 6. But you're seeing 83% of the bets coming in, 77% of the handle, laying it with the Steelers, feeling confident that this is just going to be another classic Danny Dimes in primetime situation. And I think it's hard to disagree. I personally don't have a bet on the side in this game, but I would certainly lay it before I would feel comfortable taking it with New York tonight.
Stormy, you just mentioned a kicker prop being one of the most popular, low-scoring game expected. We did see this line move a bit to the under, but what does the action look like throughout the week?
Yeah, for the under, listen, from a public betting standpoint, death taxes in public betting the over, right? And give the public credit as well, because that's been extremely profitable this week in particular. Totals went 11-4 to the over. It was tied for the best over week of the entire season to this point. Yet, when we look at this total, it was as high as 39, right, at open, and we're at 36.5 despite all of this money to the over. So you're seeing that respected, that sharp money on the under in this point. And while we have talked all this trash about the Giants today, they're not good at much. They're good at cashing under tickets, one of the best in the league, 6-1 to the under this season.
I feel like we keep needing to defend ourselves. We're not talking trash. This is data. These are not opinions.
It is what it is.
These aren't hot takes. These aren't, here's what I think. No, this is what the numbers say. This is what they are. You mentioned a couple of prop bets. What are your other favorite prop bets that you might have for tonight?
I do agree with the market in general on the Daniel Jones rushing yards. It was interesting looking at some of the most bet things today. A lot of action positive on Najee Harris and George Pickens, 2 guys who for the Steelers have really come alive each of the last 2 weeks, and just about any of the markets available to them. Most notably, though, that I found interesting was the first touchdown market. They're 1-2 in that. Najee Harris leading the way with 30% of the action coming in on him. Yet he's only had 2 touchdowns this season. Yes, it was each of the last 2 games, but neither one of them was the first touchdown of the game or even the first touchdown for the Steelers. So you're actually betting against a trend if you think Najee Harris is going to be the first scorer today. As for the Giants, the only thing that was really getting a good amount of love was Malik Neighbors over his receiving yards, but that's just because he's the go-to target. He's Daniel Jones' security blanket. He's the guy making circus catch after circus catch and batting down would-be interceptions. If you think he can do it again, go for it, but that was a stay-away play for me tonight.
Listen, for my fantasy football needs, I hope that Najee Harris has all the yards and the touchdowns tonight for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We don't need to see any of that other running back. Stormy, as always, we appreciate it. We'll see how it all plays out tonight. And obviously, as is always the case, injuries are going to be a huge part of this. And taking a look at some notable names on the injury list report tonight, some key pieces for the banged-up offensive line for both teams. The Giants are already missing tackle Andrew Thomas to the IR. Jermaine Illuminor is questionable to go tonight. Steelers rookie center Zach Frazier will miss this one as well, and that could be a really favorable matchup for Dexter Lawrence, who's been a beast for the Giants. News earlier today that rookie receiver Roman Wilson was placed on IR with a hamstring injury as well. So, again, those are the injuries that you need to know about. Russell Wilson has quickly found his favorite target after taking over the Steelers starting job. Russ looked for Pickens down the field often in Week 7. Will that continue tonight? It should, and we'll tell you why as the pregame power-up rolls on. Pregame power-up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We continue on the pregame power-up presented by Campbell's Chunky. It is soup that eats like a meal. And speaking of eating, George Pickens caught 5 big targets outside the numbers for 111 yards and a touchdown in that Week 7 win against the Jets for the Steelers. It was his first receiving touchdown and his longest reception of the season. 2 of his catches had a completion probability, though, of under 30%, according to Next Gen Stats. And the deep ball connection between Pickens and Wilson was apparent. The two hooked up on 2 of 3 deep pass attempts in Week 7 for 81 yards. As for Justin Fields, well, he went just 6 for 19 on attempts of 20-plus air yards through the first 6 weeks of the season. Now, you may be saying, wow, this sounds familiar. That's because, wait for it, it is! Russ is no stranger to the deep ball. That's been kind of his MO through his career. Since 2016, Wilson ranks first in completions, yards, and touchdowns of passes of 20 or more air yards. And earlier this week, Russ talked about his connection with Pickens and the other Steelers receivers in his debut.
George is such a tremendous player, such a tremendous receiver. His ability to make plays, he can really do it all. You know, he's had great weeks of practice too. He's been really focused. I think, you know, with our receivers too, Van and Calvin, those guys, they're talented. You know, Van's been in some big games, big situations, obviously being a Super Bowl champ, and Calvin, he's so talented, he can do it all. I really love Pat and Darnell and Connor, and we got a guy in Scotty Miller who's been big time before in clutch moments as well. And you know, and so I think, you know, when you think about all the guys that we have and the playmakers, and then you think about the running backs coming out of the backfield catching the ball as well, running it, it's we got a chance to be really great. We got more work to do though. We got to get better, and we're focused on that.
And George Pickens should get a heavy dose of the Giants' top corner, Deonte Banks, tonight, according to Next Gen Stats. Banks has shadowed an opposing wide receiver for over 85% of their routes when aligned out wide this season. No other corner has done so more than 4 times. And Banks could be coming into this game trying to prove a point as well. Let's just say his hustle was questioned last week against the Eagles when he pulled up while trying to tackle Eagles QB Jalen Hurts in the 4th quarter of their loss to Philadelphia. And what makes this kind of more interesting, Claudia, is it was just a couple of weeks ago that George Pickens' effort was questioned when he seemed to be lollygagging some of those routes against the Dallas Cowboys in that Sunday night win by Dallas a few years ago. All right, for more on everything we expect tonight, let's bring in the guy who really knows the good stuff. Played 11 years in the NFL, offensive lineman Marshall Newhouse. Of course, saw his TCU Horned Frogs with a big win over Texas Tech over the weekend in a very strange game. We'll get to that maybe later, Marshall. But we talked about how effective Wilson has been, especially with the deep ball, but he's also getting it done in play action. Is that combination exactly what offensive coordinator Arthur Smith wants to attack opposing defenses with?
It exactly is, but don't take my word for it. Take Arthur Smith's word for it. When he was the OC being interviewed, when they were debating bringing Russell Wilson in, he talked about a QB in his system being able to throw the ball with certain angles, certain loft, certain touch. And he wasn't describing Justin Fields in my eyes. He was describing Russell Wilson and things that he has done over his career. Justin Fields has led them to wins. He's led them to be a good team, but Mike Tomlin wants them to be a great team. He has said such. And so Justin Fields ultimately as a passer is in the bottom third of the league in QBR and in passing. So this is Russell Wilson giving them the best shot to take that next step to be a contending team.
And one thing, too, because he's a veteran, he's used to that pressure. That Week 7 win, as good as he looked, he faced the 4th most pressures of any quarterback in the NFL. So let's talk about pressure. Let's talk about this battle in the trenches. The Giants lead the league in sacks right now, but they also gave up a season-high 8 in Week 7. So who do you like? And I mean, now they're facing a top-ranked, according to PFF, pass rush in the Steelers. Who do you like to win the battle in the trenches tonight?
Well, listen, this Giants offensive line is struggling. They had hit kind of a stride where they were playing good ball, and then you lose a guy like Andrew Thomas, who's a young and up-and-coming tackle, and they just haven't been right ever since. And so you throw in T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith on the other side, and that creates a lot of problems. Cam Hayward is still causing problems in the middle, and that just screams pressure on Daniel Jones, and we know that is just not what he likes, is pressure. And not to mention you're losing or you're missing a lot of weapons, a lot of explosive firepower if you're the Giants. Now, the Steelers' offensive line is not playing particularly well either. They're bottom third in sack rate. They're playing some guys for injury too. And so Dexter Lawrence is going to cause some issues. And the thing that he does is he brings gravity. We talk about gravity with guys in basketball like Steph Curry or other players on offense, but he's a big dude who literally is bringing gravity at the size, but just his pressure up the middle. What that does is not allow a quarterback like Russell Wilson to step up in the pocket as efficiently, and it allows the guys on the edges to get more pressure and more hands on the quarterback and get into space. And so I'm looking for the Steelers to have the advantage here just because of the veteran leadership of Russell Wilson and them scheming to get the ball out of their hands. But it doesn't seem to be it's going to be a pretty ugly night in the trenches tonight.
Well, you mentioned Dexter Lawrence, and we found the bright spot for the Giants, and it is Dexter Lawrence, or Sexy Dexy, as he likes to call himself. He leads the NFL in sacks. You mentioned the Steelers' issues up front. He's going up against a third-string center. And by the way, I love it when people say, pressure. I've yet to meet a quarterback that says, please, I want pressure right up the front for the A-gap. Please, give it to me there. That's what I want. Does he have to be an absolute game wrecker? Does he have to do things that will just absolutely destroy the rhythm that Arthur Smith wants to create with this offense for the Giants to have any chance tonight?
Yeah, I believe he does. Listen, Arthur Smith likes a lot of under center play action passes, naked boots. He excelled at that with a guy like Ryan Tannehill. I believe Russell Wilson is doing more of that for Arthur Smith. But Dexter Lawrence can cause problems in the run game, but also in the play action game. He reads really well out of that run self by the lineman. He reads really well out of double teams. He gets his anchor low, and he causes problems. Again, he's not going to allow Russell Wilson to step up cleanly in the pocket. That messes up footwork. That messes up the second and third reads, the things that Russell does well. And Russell's going to have to put some air in the ball, which he does well as well. But that's going to give the edge rushers for the Giants a little bit more of a shot as pass rushers and getting to Russell Wilson. And so he's got to do something otherworldly because he just doesn't have a whole lot going for him with as far as the rest of his team. And so that's a lot to put on a big guy's shoulders.
That's a nice way to put it, Marshall, after we're here trashing on everything to do with Daniel Jones in this offense. Speaking of that, though, they do have a very talented weapon that they picked up in the draft in Malik Neighbors. Some interesting comments out of him last week after he led the team in yardage and targets and catches, just 4 for a measly 41 yards. And he was asked about it. Was it the Philly coverage? He said, no, go watch the tape. The targets were there. He just didn't get me the ball. What did you make out of that? Nice. What do you expect from that connection?
Listen, this guy is elite. He is a rising star. He can get open just about on anyone. And so the Giants have taken that and also schemed him open on a lot of times. I think Daniel Jones just not hitting him at the clip that he would like and they would like. But listen, this is the Steelers we're talking about. This is a Mike Tomlin-led defensive first organization. They're going to have eyes on him everywhere he goes. They're going to let him catch 8 to 10 balls underneath as long as he doesn't beat them over the top. As long as he's not getting explosive game-changing plays, they're going to allow the Giants to force feed him the ball and make sure no one else does anything else. And so that spells trouble for this Giants offense unless a guy like Wandale Moore can have some touches and cause a little stir. But they're playing with fewer cards in their hand tonight. And the Steelers know that. They're a smart team. They take away one of your best things.
Yeah, the only thing Neighbors has done wrong this year is go to a rap concert when he's in concussion protocol. Because what would loud noises and bright nights do to help you deter as your brain tries to rest? You mentioned Mike Tomlin, Marshall. I think we need to talk about this because people do not appreciate the length of sustained success that he has had. And I know Steeler fans are like, well, we haven't won a playoff game in forever. But you got to get in there. And Mike Tomlin, to me, has done the hardest thing in the world. He's found a way to keep winning after losing a top-tier franchise quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. What impresses you most about the way Tomlin has kept this thing going despite whomever is playing under center?
Well, listen, he alluded to that in a quote recently when he was talking about going from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. He is in this not to win battles, but to win the war. He's always thinking about how do we put ourselves in a position to make a run in the playoffs, because that is where the NFL is made. That's where these legacies are made. And yeah, if you have consecutive winning seasons in the regular season, that's good. That's sustained success. But he is also having his eye all the time on how are we going to put ourselves in a position to go. Because in these one-game scenarios in the playoffs, anything can happen. Listen, the Chiefs, as dominant as they've been, have won a lot of close games. That comes from leadership. That comes from situational awareness, game management. But you got to get there first. And as you said, he's trying to get there in the position to then go be great. And he called Justin Fields leading his team. They were a good team. He thinks that with Russell Wilson, they have a chance to be a great team and make a run. And that's all he's been concerned about. And that leads to a successful organization.
Well, the market expects them to get Russ's second win here. They're a 6-point favorites. The public, the sharps, everybody loves them. Trends certainly do. What's your pick for tonight?
Yeah, short week. Give me the Steelers.
All right, Marshall, thanks very much. We'll check back with you a little later on in this edition of the Pregame Power-Up, but more on what we're seeing in Pittsburgh. Taking a look at the future odds for the Steelers from the start of the season to now, once again exceeding expectations, especially the odds makers. They were plus money to make the playoffs, now minus 280. They were last to win the division at plus 800 and now second behind the Ravens. And for more on the longest tenured coach in the NFL, who's never had a non-winning season, or non-losing season rather, here's Emerson Lutzy.
I'm not into moral victories. I'm into victories. We're not in the business of making predictions. We're in the business of making preparations. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. Those are all quotes from one man. No, not Churchill or Aristotle or even Freud. Try Pittsburgh philosopher Mike Tomlin. Entering his 18th campaign, this savvy Steelers steward has no fear of a losing year.
You got to be continually pressing.
For nearly 2 decades, his steady hand has ironed out 17 straight winning seasons, forging 10 playoff berths, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and lifting the lavish Lombardi trophy in just his 2nd season on the sidelines. He's the longest tenured coach in the league, a meticulous model of consistency.
The culture is his. You know, he's the guy that organizes the building, he organizes the approach, and I think his imprint is on that team. has been and will continue to be.
Nothing seems to shake Tomlin's tenacity, from problematic players off the field to hardy holdouts, and even last week's quarterback controversy.
This is a man versus himself battle.
So with monstrous Mike dishing out wisdom like Halloween candy, it's time to play a game. Who said it? Mike Tomlin or Ted Lasso?
We're still squirreling those nuts.
Ted Lasso?
Wrong. You're a big squirrel guy. What do you think?
Gotta be Lasso.
Oh, that is not right.
I'm going with Lasso.
Not right. The strength of our pack is the pack.
Ted Lasso.
Nope. When you win, nobody remembers who got the credit.
Ted Lasso.
Idiot.
I just watched this last night too. Ted Lasso?
Jesus, you're awful at this game. We're still squirreling those nuts. Ted Lasso or Mike Tomlin?
Ted Lasso.
That is 0 for 2. It's a fine line between drinking wine and squashing grapes.
Ted Lasso.
Wow, you're not good at this game.
I've been saying Lasso, so let me go with Lasso again.
No!
Spoiler alert, they were all Mike Tomlin quotes, which begs the question, how soon until Pittsburgh's leader lands his own Apple TV series? And believe me, he's good for at least 18 seasons. Just like the lovable Lasso, there are 2 buttons Dirty Berg's boss never hits: panic and snooze.
I don't think a lot about the things that I say, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to use words to vividly capture the imagination of our guys so that they can remember the messages.
So if you're looking for Mike Tomlin, you know where to find him. Being revered by fans, respected by players, and going out like Willie Nelson every season, on a high.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Yep.
I could listen to Mike Tomlin sell insurance seminars. He's phenomenal. When it comes to the recognition, Tomlin doesn't seem to get enough of it, maybe because he's always been around, in the postseason. Taking a look at the coaching odds for Coach of the Year odds on DraftKings Sportsbook. Tomlin is currently 7th. And again, I'm going to say this again so people understand it. You need to. Do you hear the words coming out of my mouth right now is what I'm trying to tell you. Mike Tomlin has done something that Don Shula has never done. That's something that Bill Belichick has never done. These guys, Chuck Noll has never done. Continued success after losing that franchise quarterback. Chuck Noll lost Terry Bradshaw, was never the same. Don Shula lost Dan Marino, never the same. Bill Belichick, look at the numbers without Tom Brady, not the same. Mike Tomlin is always the same. He's just been shoved in between 2 of the greatest dynasties, arguably in the history of the NFL. The Patriots in the 2000s, and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes after that. That ain't his fault.
Hey, we'll see what kind of run they make with Russ. We'll see what happens. Coming up, hail Maryland, hail to the Commanders, Maryland Miracle, whatever you want to call it. It was the play of Week 8, and we're going to take a look back at it and the odds of it happening. That's next on the Pregame PowerUp.
Pregame PowerUp is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Pregame Power-Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal, continues. Well, given the Giants' that 2-5 start, many were speculating that changes could be coming to the New York leadership in the coming weeks, a.k.a. the coaching staff. It turns out that's not the case. Last week, Giants owner John Mara came out in support of both head coach Brian Daboll and GM General Manager Joe Schoen. Here's what Mara, in English, told the media at an event in Manhattan on Wednesday. Obviously, we're all very disappointed with where we are right now, but I'm going to say one thing. We are not making any changes this season. I do not anticipate making any changes in the offseason either. Daboll was asked about the support of his owner this week during his media availability.
Well, no, I think you focus on what you can control, and I've said this, numerous times. We have a very good communication process, a good relationship. Again, nobody's happy about the results or the record, but the communication and the process and the people, I believe in.
One thing they absolutely got right, and we alluded to it earlier, was drafting Malik Nabers. Nabers already among the best when it comes to racking up the yards, 5th in the NFL in receiving yards per game, just behind Justin Jefferson, another LSU product. Nabers leads the team with 427 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns despite missing 2 weeks with that concussion. He'll be looking to have a bounce-back game tonight after career lows in receptions and receiving yards last week against Philadelphia. And you always appreciate the vote of confidence, right? But it's also sometimes referred to as the dreaded vote of confidence because sometimes, it's one thing to say we're not making any changes in the offseason now. It's something different to say if they finish up 4-13.
Well, but especially you look at the Commanders are only getting better, right? The Eagles are somehow just going to keep pulling out wins because the fact that they're 5-2, and we haven't talked about them for a second,
they
haven't played
scored
well.
a point in the first quarter.
Right, they're not playing well, but they still have 5 wins, and the Cowboys are the Cowboys. They're always going to be in the mix. What makes you look at this current roster, this current coaching staff, this current record, and think, let's run it back.
Yeah.
Let's run it back.
The only thing you can think of is that playoff win over the Vikings a couple of years ago. That's it. That's it.
You know what this tells me? They are way too rash. Danny Dimes has one good season. They're like, take all of our money. Let's spend all this money on Daniel Jones. But we don't need Saquon.
Yeah. All right, betting split it. Do it.
Yeah, betting splits. Let's do it. With all of this trash talk on the Giants, the public agrees with us, okay? It's not just us. 82% of the bucks on the Steelers to cover, 73% of the bets on the over. Steelers money line seeing 92% of the bets, so that's the public. But the handle, not much different, guys. A little bit less, 87% of the handle on Steelers money line. 76% to cover for the Steelers. And as far as the prop goes, Najee Harris, you like this, Trey. You said you have him in fantasy. 65.5 rush yards.
I need him to not do well.
I
need him to not do well.
Well, then sucks. 98% of the bets are on the over, 96% of the handle. For more on where the liability is with DraftKings Sportsbook tonight, here is Captain Book himself.
It's the NFL's legacy game, Bruni versus Mara. Can New York really come to PA and slay the Steel Dragon? From $1 singles to 5-figure slappies, public action is all over Magic Mike Tomlin's team. The sharpest of the sharp know that Ball Daddy Brian Daboll is a dog, covering 61% when the G-men are catching points. Combine that with Pittsburgh's 48% ATS record as faves since 2007, and the situational spot sets up just right for the road squad. Mr. Unlimited is 6-1 straight up in Monday night home games, but if next door neighbors can make a couple house calls at the place we used to call Heinz Field, it'll be Russ looking to play catch up. And when Danny Shackles walks out of Pittsburgh tonight with the dub, the betting public will be back to square one as we roll into week 9. But one last time, in prime time, damn Daniel, let's go!
Captain Book feels himself more and more.
Oh, he really does.
He loves
Damn
himself. Yeah.
Daniel. Let's take a look at the week that was. We had a season-high 7 games this week where the public backed the favorite with over 90% of moneyline bets. 2 of those teams lost outright, with the Browns, nobody saw this coming, beating the Ravens. Ravens were an 8-point favorite. The Patriots beating the Jets. Somebody in this room saw that coming. The Jets laying 7 there. Overall this season, public favorites that are getting 90% of the money on the money line are 12-9. And like I said, the public and the sharps, everybody's loving the Steelers on the money line tonight.
As they should. But crazy things happen in football, right?
Crazy
we
things
certainly
happen.
saw that on Sunday with what took place in the final seconds or the final play of the game between Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, and Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. It's called the Hail Maryland. Rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels found Noah Brown in the end zone with no time left on the clock. Now, it certainly didn't hurt the Commanders that the cornerback who was supposed to be boxing out Noah Brown, Tyreek Stevenson, was over in the corner taunting fans or celebrating with Bears fans when they didn't even know the play had started. DraftKings had a better place, a $1,000 bet prior to the Hail Mary on the Commanders to win at plus 3,500 for a nice little $35,000 payout. Unbelievable. Here are the top money makers from Sunday's action, the most prop bets handled by the DK Sportsbook on Sunday. Bettors who were high on George Kittle were well rewarded last night when he went over 4.5 receptions on National Tight End Day. Kyle Pitts making a rare appearance on the list as well, hitting the over on his receiving yards, although he almost pulled a Leon Lett and fumbled the ball as he went across the goal line. I'm still not sure he scored. I thought that Antoine Winfield Jr. got there ahead of time. By the way, there were 15 touchdowns on National Tight Ends Day from tight ends. I mean, it's a totally made-up holiday, but good for them.
Let them have it.
They celebrated. They celebrated the right way.
Do we have a National Alignment Day? We should have that.
No, every day is National Alignment Day. Let's be clear about that. Appreciate the hogs that move, and we bring in our guy Marshall Newhouse one more time. 11 seasons in the NFL. Let's talk about the Hail Mary for a second, because you played with Green Bay and you played with Aaron Rodgers when he was there. Nobody has done the Hail Mary better over the years than Aaron Rodgers. When you're talking about that in the huddle, is it just, well, here we go, or all right, we have a plan and we're going to execute it?
Well, yeah, you practice these things every week. Every team has multiple looks for Hail Marys, both on offense and defense, and you have an approach to the protection. You're assuming they're going to rush 3, maybe 4. So the quarterback understands he wants to eventually roll out to his dominant side, but sometimes that doesn't happen. The receivers have a plan of where they're going to line up on the goal line and who's going to be in front, who's going to be back. So it's not just a chaotic thing, even though it looks chaotic. Same on the defense. So shout out to Tyreek Stevenson. He was making some friends in the Washington end zone, and now he's having to do public statements apologizing to his team and the fans. So, yeah, it's definitely something that you practice. It's intentional, but there's a lot of luck involved at the end of the day.
Yeah, lack of commitment. That's all that was in terms of not defending that pass. Speaking of that, shall we talk about Anthony Richardson, Marshall? Because why on earth, 3rd and goal in the 3rd quarter, did Anthony Richardson decide to tap out? Well, he did tell us. Take a listen.
Man, tired. I ain't gonna lie. That was a lot of running right there, what I did, and I don't think I was gonna be able to go that next play. So I just, just told Sam I just needed a break right there.
No,
I can't with this.
Marshall,
I can't.
Last I checked, this is football, not wrestling. You finish the drive. You don't tap out. What happened here?
You know what? I've actually gained sympathy as the day has gone on for Anthony Richardson, because you just got to lie, man. You can't tell us that you actually retired, because ultimately, listen, it was 3rd and goal. And here's the other thing. We allow substitutions for certain positions on the field. Receivers, running backs, tight ends, they shuttle in all the time. They tap helmets. They've had 3 plays in a row. They ran a deep ball. That's forgivable. Quarterbacks and linemen do not come out. And not to mention, that play ended up being a run play where you're just handing the ball off. I wish Joe Flacco, I imagine Joe Flacco's going to be the one to talk to him and be like, hey, you just got to stay in there. And I said this earlier, throw up on the lineman's shoes.
Yes.
Take an extra second.
Yes.
Maybe call a timeout. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways to be a savvy vet and extend that. So I attribute this to him being young, but you got to learn how to lie, man. Lie better, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, the fact that he did it is one thing. The fact that he said it, Marshall, and didn't think this is going to sound terrible, that's the part that I can't get behind.
Yeah, listen, it's 3rd and goal against a divisional team that you're competing with. It's just, it can't happen. Even if you're a dead corpse and you direct snap it to Jonathan Taylor, infinite number of things could be better than you tapping out on the 3rd and goal. It just doesn't make any sense.
And he's supposed to be the most athletic, strongest, fastest quarterback we've ever seen. Maybe that your conditioning is terrible, okay?
I forgive him. He'll figure it out. That's one he'll never forget.
Never.
Well, we'll remind him. I can promise you that. Speaking of another quarterback that we'll remind people of, Aaron Rodgers. Okay, they've lost 5 straight games. They got rid of the coach. They changed the play caller. They brought in his guy, Devontae Adams. It didn't change diddly poo, to quote the Jim Morris Sr. all those years ago. Didn't change a damn thing. They were 4-4 with Zach Wilson as their quarterback and Robert Saleh as their head coach. Those were the problems. They got rid of those. The Jets are done, toasted, finito. They got a short week. They're going to play a very good team. What the hell went wrong here?
Trey, do I need to follow that, man? You nailed it. I mean, I don't know what else there's to say.
This is a therapy session, really, Marshall. It's just
listen, we talked about it ad nauseum. It's just it's a cursed franchise from top down, Woody Johnson down to the GM to now the head coach who's fired and the new head. I mean, it's just like what a guy call it doo-doo. Doo-doo flows downhill. Yeah. This is just a toxic organization. I don't know how they get up under this. If you're a Jets fan, this is normal. You're used to this. You're not used to all the hype and the expectation. You're used to fumbling and stubbing your toe and falling in the trash can, stepping on the rake, all those euphemisms. So listen, Aaron's got to eat this. I don't know where they go from here. Luckily, that division behind Buffalo stinks. Maybe they make a run, but we said that 2 weeks ago when they got Devontae. I don't see where the light in the tunnel. I don't want Aaron's career to end this way. That's why I feel bad. But this is also his hands are all over this. It's just bad all around.
He's got to own it, and they're gonna be 2-7 after the Thursday night game against the Texans. But the Jets situation does speak to what is the most important thing in football. If you don't have your quarterback situation figured out, you got no chance. We talked about it with Anthony Richardson. He's completing 44% of his passes. That would be the lowest since another Florida quarterback, Tim Tebow, in 2011, completed about 46%. That's how bad we're talking about this is. The Dolphins season may have been destroyed, Marshall, because they didn't have a competent backup behind Tua with a history injury that came in before the concussions in Miami when he had all the issues at Alabama. And then you look at Green Bay that found Malik Willis, who is a competent backup, and he's going to maybe salvage their season with the way he's played already, with Jordan Love now missing, looks like extended time because of that groin injury. You have to have this quarterback thing figured out or you don't have a chance.
Listen, you have to have it figured out, but you need more than that. You need a plan. Give credit to Matt LaFleur. He have a plan. Malik Willis was discarded goods from Tennessee. No one else wanted Malik Willis, I believe. And what did Matt LaFleur do? He game planned around his strengths, and they leaned on Josh Jacobs. They leaned on the offensive line, and they did a little bit when he comes in and relief of Jordan Love. That is coaching. That's preparation. That's having a plan. It's one thing to have the guy who's talented enough to be your reserve quarterback in crazy situations. Chase Daniel made a career out of this. I give him all the credit in the world. We didn't see a lot of him, but he was ready. He was ready to go, and he could win you a game. It's about having a plan in place.
Shout out to my guy, Chase Daniel, who I know is watching. Claudia.
Yeah, they were a quarterback away from a Super Bowl, a good head coach away from a Super Bowl, all of those things. They should be planning for a postseason push, but instead they might be planning for next season. So let's talk about some of the teams that are doing that because we're wrapping up Week 8. So you have your contenders, and then you have teams like the Giants who maybe are just looking towards next season. And as a player, I know you never give up, but what sort of advantage?
No, some players do. Some players do. Some players do.
I know Marshall Newhouse never won.
No, he never did. He couldn't.
What sort of advantage, though? And I guess just like a feeling in the locker room, does that give for a team who is a contender heading into Week 8, Week 9 versus one that's not, Marshall?
I'll tell you a story. In Green Bay, I was fortunate enough to be part of teams that we were winning a lot. We had a really good streak going, but we knew when things started to get cold and we had teams come in with losing records, if we just hit them in the mouth in the first quarter, they would shut it down.
Yep.
Pseudo Hall of Fame or Hall of Fame defensive lineman would come in there. I'd cut him on the backside, and he asked me not to cut him for the rest of the game. And I had a pretty easy game the rest of the time. Teams, certain guys, just making business decisions. That is the reality of the league. There are certain guys who are fighting for roster spots who will play their hearts out on special teams or whatever, but certain guys will just kind of lay it down a little bit. And there's a real ability for that. But if you give them a chance, you give them glimmer, there's a lot of good coaches who are also fighting for their jobs who are going to coach their tails off. So it's just a matter of making it clear when you're a contender, when these guys come into town, that you're on a trajectory upward and they are not.
Yeah, bottom line is just because you get paid doesn't mean you're a pro. You find out who's a pro when it's all against you and you're still given maximum effort and maximum preparation. Marshall always gives us maximum effort and maximum preparation. We appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, Marshall.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a lot of information in these games tonight, and we just can't fit it all into a 1 hour every show. So when we come back, we're unloading it all for you in what we call the data dump. It's ahead on the Pregame PowerUp.
Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
Trey and Claudia back with you on the Pregame Power Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We're going to start strong here with Next Gen Cat, seeing who the Stat Cat likes to score first touchdown tonight. Let's see.
Our frisky feline has decided on, is it Devin Singletary? Singletary, plus 1,300.
Okay, that's a nice little payout. He's not on the board in terms of most bet anytime touchdown scorers tonight. Najee Harris is up there. George Pickens, Neighbors, plus 190. We'll see if he's complaining after tonight. Pat Fryermuth and then Tyrone Tracy at plus 350. Some interesting bets that DraftKings saw. Somebody put 2,190 and 16 cents on George Pickens anytime touchdown for a payout of over 5,365. Somebody put $300 on Malik Neighbors, 2 or more touchdowns at 17-1 to pay out 5,400. So you never know why people bet these and why these certain amounts of money, but we hope all the best for them.
Shoot or shoot, Claudia.
Shoot or shoot, man.
Say it. Time to give you everything we couldn't fit into our hour-long show. The Pregame Power presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We call this the Data Dump. The Steelers' second-half defense has been strong to mostly strong this year. Opponents are scoring 5.1 points per second half against Pittsburgh. That's the lowest mark in the NFL. They are closers, that Steelers defense. It helps when you have Minka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt. Pittsburgh has yet to allow a single point coming out of the locker room for the second half in the third quarter this year. Steelers plus 68 in the second half. That is, yes, the best in the NFL in point differential.
And on offense, they've scored 37 points last week against the Jets, giving them 32 or more points in back-to-back games for the first time since week 5 and 6 of 2020. The Steelers haven't scored 30 or more in 3 straight games since 2015, when they did it in 6 straight from week 9 to week 15, Trey.
Yeah, and then let's go back to the Giants. As we said earlier, the Giants lead the NFL in sacks this year with 31. Most sacks for any team through 7 games since the 2017 Jaguars, who made it all the way to the AFC Championship game and had a 10-point lead on Tom Brady and the Patriots at Foxborough in the fourth quarter before they fell apart because, Blake Bortles. And that's the 5th most sacks since 2000. Actually, to be fair, there was a quick whistle on a turnover that really killed the Jags' chances. The Giants are also 3rd in quarterback hits and 3rd in opposing third down conversion percentage.
And some more Giants trends, because that's what we all want, right? 7 of the Giants' last 8 games have gone under the total points. In each of the Giants' last 4 road games, their opponents have scored first, and that is a bet you can make at the DraftKings Sportsbook. And Daniel Jones has thrown at least 1 interception in each of his 7 previous Monday appearances.
So there's some 7s there. He's 0 for 7 on Monday Night Football, and he's thrown at least 1 interception in 7 of his previous appearances. So
it's not good.
These things seem to correlate with one or the other. All right, so I guess the question is, they've made this move to Russell Wilson, right? How far can they go? I think they can go pretty far because I think Russell responds well to authoritarianism, okay? Like Mike Tomlin, he's the voice of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
If you don't fall in line with Mike Tomlin, it ain't going to work out for you. And I think Russell responds well to that kind of leadership.
Let me ask you this then, because we have the exact stage of elimination at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, it's basically even money to lose in the wild card round for the Steelers. Next, to miss the playoffs altogether is the next most likely plus 220. Okay, so even money. Is that a little disrespectful, though, saying that they're going to get in?
The problem is who they'll be playing. Because look, right now the Kansas City Chiefs are on the Super Information Highway Cruise Control to home field advantage, which means they would have the bye. So who's the 2 seed? Is it Buffalo? Is it Baltimore?
Right.
And where does Pittsburgh fall in that line, especially if Baltimore wins the division? Like if they have to play a 2 like Baltimore or Buffalo in the wild card round, that could be problematic. That could be problematic.
But both, as we've seen, there are ways to beat these teams. If the Browns can do it against the Ravens, I think the Steelers certainly could.
Every year there's that one game that's on everybody's schedule, like how did that happen? And it felt like that was the game for the Ravens. But again, they basically have a 4-game deficit to make up if they want to get home field advantage because they have 3 losses and they lost head-to-head against City.
Deshaun Watson's never coming back.
No, never. Well, he is because they're paying him $70 gajillion. Thanks for watching. We'll be back on Thursday with another edition of Pregame PowerUp. It's presented by Campbell's Chunky. It is soup that eats like a meal.